Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hey there, everyone. I am Stanton Cox, and I am a mixed chick, mixed with black and white and Jamaican and Scottish and Native American and Cherokee and Danish and lots of other things that I have yet to discover, I'm sure.
And I'm Heidi Duro, and I am mixed too. And we are the Mixed Chicks.
Yeah.
Of Mixed Chicks Chat. This is the only live weekly show about being racially and culturally mixed. We come to you every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. If you haven't caught us before, we have a treasure trove of archive materials. Today is December 9th, 2009. That means we have more than 200 episodes you could listen to before this one. Just download them from iTunes for free.
Yes. Many, many, many. Check them out on iTunes. That's the best way. Just subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. It's really the easiest way. Comes straight to your inbox, and you can listen. And we haven't told you our email address in quite a while. We'd love to get your letters. We'd love to hear how the show has impacted you or comments, and that is mccpodcast@gmail.com. We also want to let you know about our blog. Generally, we don't have a lot of conversation going on over there, but it's essentially kind of a way to summarize our show episodes and also keep you updated on previous guests. And you should go over there today because we have a post from Casey Baldwin, who was our guest a couple weeks ago, and she's just this terrific firecracker who's working for Teen Project Race. And she has put together a video, and it's really excellent, and the video is up on the blog. So that is Mixed Chicks Chat, www.mixedchickschat.typepad.com. Check that out.
Yeah, check it out. We also have some other announcements. Things are happening. People are talking about mixed race identity, and they want to do it in a critical way. So we just got the announcement for what sounds like a fabulous conference. We hope that we can be a part of it. We'll see. It's called Critical Mixed Race Studies Conference. They're inviting panels and roundtables and seminars that address the conference theme, Emerging Paradigms in Critical Mixed Race Studies. The deadline for proposals is May 1st, and selection will be finalized by July 1 of 2010. It's being spearheaded by Camila Fojas, Laura Kina, and Waiming Dariotis. I think I've said all of their names wrong except for Laura Kina, who we had on the show quite some time ago. She's a really talented artist. And anyway, so you should check it out. We don't have this up on the blog yet, but we will.
Yes.
We don't have a website address here for them, but if you're listening right now, you can direct questions to cmrs@depaul.edu. We'll try to get that blog post up as soon as we can.
Yes, and Silver Spring Steve, thank you for sending us information on a lecture series called Mixed Race in the United States. If you are in the Washington area at the Simpson Center for the Humanities at the University of Washington, there will be a lecture series that is beginning January 6th and going through March 3rd, actually, in Kane Hall 220. So if you're around there, definitely go to that lecture series and let us know how it is.
Absolutely. And then there is a call for an undergraduate thesis. This is what we received, and we wanted to pass it along to all of you in case you wanted to participate. She says, share your story. Are you Asian, Indian, mixed with African American, or of African descent? If you would like more information on how to participate in her UCLA undergraduate thesis project, which is a series of interviews, please contact Shamim at ucla.edu. You spell that SHAMIME at ucla.edu. So if you are interested, contact her.
Okay, and just a couple more things very quickly. There is a little girl, Maya. She is 4 years old, and her parents are an interracial couple. I think her mom is South Asian, her dad is Caucasian, and she needs a bone marrow donor. So please go to www.caringbridge.org/visit/concentrate and you can get more information and find out if you are a potential donor for her. Please go help them out. And then finally, we have to say thank you to MASK, Multiracial Americans of Southern California. They had an amazing shindig last weekend to celebrate their 20th anniversary, and it was just really wonderful, a wonderful evening. And yeah,
they did a fantastic job. They honored several people in the community who are sharing stories of their own and creating more space for more stories about the multiracial experience. So, and we also had a great time. We had a great time. We won stuff in a raffle.
we won stuff, and I had some champagne. It was really wonderful. They did just a great job, and we're really glad to be able to collaborate with them. And now, one more thing. Gilmo just mentioned. We have to say this. MixedandHappy.com. We had Susie Richardson on last week to talk about. She's got this blog, MixedandHappy.com. They want picture submissions to send to Keith Bardwell, which is the guy who denied the interracial couple, a marriage license, and they're going to send him a Christmas postcard. She's up to 123 submissions, so keep them coming. She's still taking them. All right, now our guest, Dr. Spencer, is Professor and Director of Afro-American Studies at the University of Nevada at Las Vegas. He has published 2 books, Spurious Issues, Race and Multiracial Identity Politics in the United States, and Challenging Multiracial Identity, and has also written numerous book chapters and journal articles on multiracial identity. Welcome, Dr. Spencer.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
We're glad you could come on. So we don't know if you've practiced for this or studied it, but it is always our first question to every guest we have on. And so I'll go ahead and ask, and I hope you can answer for us. What are you?
What am I? That's an interesting question. Let me answer it this way. Okay, I could just say I'm a human being, but that's really, that's kind of bogus. Let me put it this way. If I believed in biological race, I would be a first-gen Nixie, but I don't, so I'm not.
All right. Good, correct answer. A+ for your answer.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Spencer, we've got to put it out there. The reason for, first of all, we have been trying to get in touch with you, and we knew that one of our, in fact, I think he's got perfect attendance here, Silver Spring Steve, one of the regular listeners of the podcast, asked one of our guests about you, and I had recognized the name because I knew that we were looking to have you come on, but he was really integral in getting us in touch with you. But then you also found out about one of our previous podcasts in which we mentioned your name, and you wanted to come on and get to give your side of the story. So, so tell us about what your work centers on.
Well, I've been at this for, I guess, about 12 years professionally, although it started in graduate school. So I guess since about 1994, 1995, I've been involved in this. And basically, I guess my work centers on trying to look at mixed race identity from, I guess, what we might call a meta perspective, trying to look at it above and over the kind of argumentative stuff that goes on at the grassroots level. I know I didn't articulate that very, very well. If you'd like me to try it again, I'm happy to.
No, we still have another 25 minutes.
Yes, there's plenty of time to. Well, so I think this is so interesting because you said, well, if I believed in race, I would identify as a first-generation mixie. So let's talk about that first. So clearly, then the concept of race for you does not exist at all.
Well, I mean, the reality of race doesn't exist. Clearly, people are racialized in the United States, and racists rely on race in order to be racist. But biological race is a complete fallacy. That was my position.
And so, is that part of what then brings you to say that that multiracial people in the multiracial movement who use this idea, because they're using this idea of race, then it kind of cancels that position out.
Well, yeah, it becomes inconsistent in my view, I guess. And what I would say is that I don't see how you can be an advocate for multiracial identity, either for yourself or for someone else, i.e. your children, and at the same time claim to not believe in biological race. I think that's a logical fallacy.
Oh.
But do you mean that in the sense of the way that government actually is part of multiracial identity? I'm thinking about the census or school forms or any kind of form like that where you identify your race. Or are you thinking about it also in terms of people just saying, "Oh, I'm multiracial"? Because I guess I think of it two different ways. That
right.
Well, I mean, certainly the latter, but I mean, it's interesting that so early on you've brought up what becomes the biggest. It's not a problem, but it's something that I have to struggle with, and that is that while I am against the idea, let's say, of multiracial identity, at the same time, until we can come up with a better means of fighting racism, I'm actually for the idea of the racial checkboxes, which some people see as a contradiction. If I had time to explain it, I would, but I don't think it's a contradiction.
Oh, so it's the latter, which is that you feel like, for example, this show obviously is all about this mixed experience. Our festival is all about this mixed experience, and you feel that if we celebrate those things, that then we are accepting that race does exist.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, just the same as if someone were having a black festival that was not about culture, let's say, but was about blackness as racial blackness. I think that would be fallacious as well.
So what about, because your title is, Director of African American Studies, isn't
right.
Much of that part of blackness? So are you saying that then that isn't representative of African American race, but that it's representative just purely of culture?
No, it's representative of people who've been racialized in this country and throughout the world. My ultimate goal, if I could, one could live long enough to see it, it won't happen in my lifetime, would be for, let's say, so I teach Afro-American studies, I write about Afro-American studies. My ultimate goal would be that in some time, 100 years, 200 years, whatever, it would become an irrelevant topic, or maybe a topic only in a historical sense. But people are racialized, and it's important. For instance, I think that you can't understand American history. You can't separate American history from Afro-American history, although people like to do that. You can't do it. It's an integral part of American history.
Mm-hmm. And so, and then on the other hand, also you can't separate because I find that in a lot of programs, like Afro-American programs, then the focus is purely just on African history. Or in a lot, because my big thing, and this is why I'm so very excited to have you on, because I've always wanted somebody to bounce these ideas off of, and in particular somebody who, again, is a director of a program of Afro-American studies, and I was pretty active in, the Black Student Union and African American Studies department at my school in undergrad, and I have come to a point where I feel like during that period of time, it was necessary for me, but it was also a very negative period of time where I was denying much of who I am. And I don't feel like I was denying myself racially who I was, but that I was denying myself of who I was culturally and historically.
Well, those kind of environments are very trying, I think, particularly at the college age. I think there's a lot of, when you talk about black student organizations, they can be horribly, how would you put it, oppressive to those who they feel aren't towing the line, let's say.
Right. And
I mean, I'm no supporter of the typical Black Studies group. You know, I have to know more about one before I would sort of give it my support.
okay.
Because they're engaged in as much fallacy as anybody else, and so much misinformation and so much abusive history.
You know, I this is Heidi, and I absolutely hear what you're saying. Part of my difficulty is being able to talk about this in a way that recognizes that we're not where, as a society, we're not where I would want us to be as a society, and taking that into realistic account when we're talking about how to talk about race on government forums and things like that. But then also I go back to what Fanchon says, is that there is a personal story that's lost when we don't talk about multiracial identity in our discourse of race. So, well, I'm just going to throw this out here. The Tiger Woods story this week. I was really shocked about the Associated Press even running a story about how Black women are upset about the fact that all of his mistresses are white.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's a troubling thing for people to then. I'm not sure how people put together the actual story of his life when they have that posture that they claim him, and yet, you know, the daughter that he has from his marriage has a white mother, and so. I'm not being very articulate about this.
Yeah,
I'm hoping you can start to fill in these thoughts I'm having, and what is. How can we recognize this schism between people wanting to identify as multiracial and then still having a community? And yeah, that wasn't a question.
Well, with Woods, I mean, I can certainly understand. I mean, his case was so interesting because you have the person who, very much like Michael Jordan, is very apolitical. I mean, he allows himself to be categorized the way people are happy categorizing him. Although he has been very much claimed by the Black population in the United States. And then when you see all of these, you know, if you go to a website and look at all the pictures that they put up of these women, it's just striking how they all have a certain similarity. You know, it's just whether that's right or wrong, or whether the Black woman's perspective you cite is accurate or justifiable, is just darn interesting. Because I think Tiger's been, you know, his Oprah, you know, Cablinasian statement, despite all of that, he's been sort of accepted and grasped by the Black community because he's so very, very successful. And I think there's a kind of, if it's been one, okay, or maybe two, we understand. But when you see these, you know, 10 or 11 white women, it just sort of scratch your head. And I think there's a sense of, well, okay, man, we don't want to own this guy after all. Not justifying it, but I think that's what's going on.
I see.
Well, it is what's going on, but I mean, then this takes me back to kind of your point of, you know, in the ideal world, you wouldn't have an Afro-American Studies department. We wouldn't have a mixed roots film and literary festival, you know, that because we would all stop seeing race. Then who does it fall to make these changes? Because if you're not doing it and we're not doing it, who is going to do it?
Well,
and what do we do? What are the steps?
Right.
Well, I mean, what I would answer would be probably pretty unpersuasive to you, but I think that it's got to be like education, and continuing assault on the idea of race. That's what it's got to come down to.
And when you say that, because I mean, that's what we try. I think we try to do that in our very casual. You know, we're not here to tell people different things, but we are here to share different ideas. Yeah. So we talk. We do one talk. We do the festival so people can share stories, and in that way, people are educated by different experiences that may seem specific, that speak to universal themes. But what do you mean exactly? Like, is there a manifesto? Is there something certain that people can go to and read, or discussions they can engage in?
All my books, of course.
Yes.
Is that too much? You'll have to come back.
I know, right.
What do you do? I mean, to me, it's like, the way I envision it, it's like belief in race is like belief in a flat Earth or belief in a geocentric solar system. These kinds of beliefs took hundreds of years to get people to divest themselves of. So it's a long-term goal. It's not going to happen overnight. My question, where it relates to the mixed race movement, is: are we getting closer to that goal via the mixed race movement, or is that taking us farther away from that ultimate goal?
Well, no, your argument is that it's taking us away, right?
Well, yes.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when we first started thinking about the festival, we originally were going to call it the Mixed Race Festival, and we realized that it wasn't about that. And I mean, it's funny because we never really kind of had a long conversation about it, but I don't know to you. I mean, to me, I still feel like this conversation hasn't, even though I agree with the fact that race doesn't exist, and I am with you that I'm looking forward to the day when we're not talking about it, but I also see that as totally separate from sharing your experiences of what really, I think, boils down to most of the time, and we've certainly seen on this show, what really boils down more to as cultural experiences. And so I wonder if the big issue with the word race. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Fanchen. I was going to add that the reason we are so engaged in not a lecture every week, but a chat and a festival once a year that celebrates story is that, well, maybe it's a sneaky way of getting people to, one, pay attention, and at the same time become educated about a connectedness that maybe they weren't aware of before. Yeah. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, I totally understand where people are coming from, but part of what has sort of given me the deserved or perhaps undeserved reputation I have, in your circles, is that I take a harder line and say that what people ought to do is simply commit racial suicide.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, what does that?
To kill your race, to kill your personal race, to be unraced, to stop listening to the sociologists, to stop listening to the psychologists, to say you have to have. See, the problem, I think that the crux of the identity issues that you talk about are because the sociologists tell us, the psychologists tell us that we have to have a race in order to be fully human. The sociologists tell us we have to have a race in order to be a functioning member of society. And to both of those, I say that's bogus. I don't have a race. It disturbs people sometimes, but I don't, and I choose to live that way. And what I think a lot of the youth and the Generation X are, and I understand why, but they are so wrapped up in the idea of saying, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm this other. Well, I guess other is the wrong word to use.
That's loaded.
I'm mixed. And see, when I say, I think the perfect agents for getting us to the post-racial future are, in fact, mixed race, so-called mixed race people. If they would, because I think mixed race identity in a logical kind of way, which is where I always come from, sort of informal, formal logic, is that mixed race people themselves embody the contradiction. They destroy race themselves a priori by their very existence, but only if they deny race, not if they embrace race. And once you go to I am mixed race, now you're embracing race. You see?
So what about if you go to I am this and I am this and I am this?
But all those things are fallacies. They're false consciousnesses.
Well, for me, when I say I am Jamaican, I'm not saying I'm a race. I'm saying my father is from this country.
Oh, well, then you're claiming a cultural identity.
Right.
Which I wouldn't take issue with the cultural identity. But I think sometimes those cultural mixtures, they slide into racial talk.
Absolutely.
So I think it's difficult to keep that from sliding into race.
Yeah.
at least for some people.
Well, yeah, I'm going to stick by this, and I'm going to figure out what I mean by it at some point. But instead of saying I am mixed, ultimately what it is, I'm a story, and I'm also a part of history, and I'm part of your family. I'm saying all of those things when I'm saying that I'm mixed.
Well, I can understand that, and clearly because people have been racialized throughout our history and can continue to be racialized today, you have certain experiences. I've had certain experiences. What I tried to do, though, is to look at all that stuff and reject it as a false consciousness and say, despite the fact that I used to think I was black and used to think I was black-white, I now realize that I have no race at all, and try to move all of us toward a place where everyone has that same opinion.
Wow.
What kind of
I know.
I love I have not thought of it.
I think it's a noble goal.
Yep.
And so you say that the response to you is not so good. People are against you mostly in the multiracial community, or do you find that the message is not accepted anywhere? I don't mean to make you sound paranoid or something.
No, it's very.
How's this message working out for you?
It's an interesting place to be. Maria Root apparently thinks I take this position to sell books, which is not true. I write books because it's what I feel.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly I don't have a lot of friends in the mixed race movement. I certainly thank you for inviting me onto your show.
You can certainly consider yourself our friend.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
And that we very much respect your voice. And I don't want to interrupt, but this is exactly what we're saying, is that we've got to have space for every voice. That is our point. So I'm sorry, but please continue.
Yeah, no, and then that's part of the problem is you have a lot of fighting going on at the ground level. But no, I haven't gotten a good reception there. But I'm an academic, and I'm engaging with other academics. And there's, if you kind of get into the meta-theoretical realm, there's a tremendous conversation going on with some really cutting-edge stuff going out there. For instance, there's some work coming out by Michelle Elam. And
she's one of my favorite people. Her husband was a professor at Stanford and a good friend now.
She's got a book coming out next year. And also there's some good work being done by a woman at Rice called Jennifer Bratter. And there's all kinds of good work going on out there, and that's what I try to engage in that. So I understand that what I say about the grassroots movement isn't appreciated by that movement. I'm not really trying to, I'm not really engaging that movement so much. I'm more talking about it at a meta-theoretical level. And I hope that doesn't sound condescending, but that's just the reality of it.
I'm sorry, we have to read. Our listeners have been asking questions, and we're very engaged. This is just a great conversation to have with you today. So I'm going to try to get some of these in here. Bill Moe says, I hear what you're saying, but for the record, I am not on board. For me, my race is a blessing, and that's how I raise my son. We've got, and then guest 3 responds, Bill Moe said, does that ring true for you, what Dr. Spencer is saying? Could you substitute the word culture for race, which is what you've said? And he says, yes, but I don't see why I should. And then Silver Spring Steve just asked a question of you. You've been critical of multiracial scholarship. How can it be improved?
You want me to answer that one?
Yes,
or
please.
Answer,
yes, please. Yes.
Well, that's been the subject of my second book was dealing with that, in fact. And I think the problem with multiracial scholarship, and I'm biased, and I could be, not exactly accurate what I'm saying, but I see it as being divided between two camps: the meta-theoretical camp, which I consider myself a member of, or the sort of critical mixed race studies camp, and the other camp is the cheerleading camp, which I think it's not entirely the case, but many of these authors, particularly authors who are white women with mixed-race children or mixed-race nephews and nieces, who are not really being objective in their writings. And I would, I might as well say, people like Kathleen Corrigan, people like Ursula Brown, people like Marion Kilson, I think they're doing too much cheerleading and not enough objective scholarship.
Okay, now I'm sorry. I have to stop you. I don't see how you can mention their race in talking about, these women after everything you just said. To me,
that's always my first footnote. That's always my first footnote. Okay, people who consider themselves to be or are racialized as white.
Okay, so you do come back down to using the word.
Well, I could preface it with that very, very long statement.
Well, I think it's important because I think it just took me out of what you were saying, and you're making a great point, and we agree. I mean, our show, we need to remind people all the time that this is not a scholarly show. This is not a formal conversation. This is really allowing for the various stories of mixed culture and mixed race to, for people to have a place to share the stories. And I do agree that it is also important to, also have this critical scholarship and, but then to, and that's why I asked, how are we going to do this if we're not capable of doing, of not using race to discuss people? I'm sorry.
Well, look, you have
it's just Teresa. It's a brain bender.
It is a brain bender.
I'll go ahead and look. The biggest problem we have here is white supremacy. That's the big problem.
How can white supremacy exist if there's no such thing as race? Because it's racialized.
No, that's a great question. Because people wrongly think they're white. And people wrongly are given privileges in their country because they are racialized as white. It's a false consciousness that has a practical reality, you see. Mm-hmm. So, that's it. People think they're white. Too many people in this country think they're white. That's the ultimate goal, is to get people because you could say to all the quote-unquote black people in the United States, okay, divest yourself of your race. If they do that, but at the same time, all the people who think they're white don't divest themselves of their race, that's going to be a disaster, you see. So that goes back to still the necessity for check boxes and the kind of preface, my initial footnote all the time. But, race doesn't exist, clearly. It's biological race doesn't exist, but yet people are racialized, and people live lives that are hampered and affected by race. And our goal is to get away from it, not to reinforce it.
Okay.
Well, I think we have to have you back on for another show, Dr. Spencer, because
Sure.
we'd love to have you back on.
Can I say one closing thing? Because it goes to the reason why I asked to get on your show, which to me is it's fun. It's a funny, warm experience. When you're talking to Maria Root a couple of months ago, I guess, she took it upon herself to psychologize a little bit, and she suggested that there may be some traumatic experiences in my early life that lead me to hold the positions I do. And I just think it's hilarious because it's as if one of the leading scholars of mixed race identity in the United States, which I account her to be, is essentially calling me a tragic mulatto, which is a badge I guess I can kind of wear proudly now.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Good.
We'll leave it on that note.
We will.
But I think, Fanchen, what might be interesting is if we can mobilize our forces here and get folks to read a book and have Dr. Spencer come back, and we'd actually have
like Oprah's thing,
yes.
Right?
That would be our book of the month. Yeah. For the Mixed Chick Chat book of the month. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's just been terrific to have you on. It certainly was too short, and so we will be in touch very soon to have you back on. We won't finish it, but at least to continue the conversation.
Hey, absolutely. That'd be wonderful.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, wow. Thank you again, Silver Spring Steve, for making sure we brought Dr. Spencer on. You were very helpful in that. And Vilma wants to know if there's an audiobook. Well, let's do it. Heidi and I will put our heads together and figure out when that show can happen, when we can read both books and come back on and have even more great conversation.
Or
okay,
we could do like point counterpoint even, possibly. That's a lot of books to read. But anyway, so we'll think about the best way to do this, and we'll get back to you with your homework assignment soon.
That's right, yes. All right, guys, I am Fanchon Koss, and I am half black and half white. I am racialized as half black and half white. I'm culturally... I like that little footnote, but it is he made the point. It's a lot to say, and I'm also Jamaican and Danish and Scottish and Cherokee and Blackfoot and some more stuff.
And I'm Heidi Duro, and I am a story.
Nice, and we are the Mixed Picks. And thanks so much for joining us. Guest 3, which is Silver Springs wife, Julia, thank you so much for being on with us today. Guest 2, hello. Vilmo, hello. Betsy, you joined us. Thank you for coming on. And Nadia. And again, our guest, Dr. Spencer. All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.